I need you to knock some sense into me. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I don't know.
I enjoy listening to you. I don't always agree with everything.
All right. Enough of this persiflage.
So, you want my question?
I'm certainly not going to get myself in trouble by telling you what to do.
That makes great sense. Gosh, that's good.
Did I overwhelm you with words and wisdom?
I've got 7 kids. I feel like I could call you every day.
Wait, you're telling me I'm wrong?
Yes, I am, Dr. Ray.
You just need to tune in to Dr. Ray, honey. He's got all the answers.
Am I right or am I right?
Probably.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
Man joins a very strict monastic order, silent order. He is allowed 2 words every 5 years. He goes out, he works the fields, he prays, does his duty. At the end of 5 years, he walks into the abbot's office. The abbot says, "Well done, my son. You have earned 2 words. What are they?" Hard bed. He turns around and walks out. Works silently for another 5 years, doing his chores, praying hard, doing everything he's supposed to do. At the end of 10 years, he comes in, the abbot says, "My son, you have 2 more words. What are they?" Bad food. And he walks out. 5 more years of the same. Comes in, end of 15 years. Abbot says, "Welcome, my son. You have 2 more words. What are they, please?" "I quit." The abbot says, "You know, that doesn't surprise me. You've done nothing but gripe since you've been here." Thank you for joining me. My mom used to tell me that joke. My mom loved that joke. It's a good one. This is Look Back Friday, a variant of The Doctor Is In, a co-production of EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network and Ave Maria Radio Communications. This is where we take... See, I always use we. I don't... Forced teaming is what that calls. It's what that calls. It's not we. I do it. But I kind of want us all to be together, as one sharing the moment. All right. This is where I take Andrew Kruchek with me. Maybe that's what I mean by we. Past calls. Many comments could be made on those past calls, but I can't make them because obviously there are people waiting in line. We just try to give a nugget or something. This is not therapy here. But when I see a call that brings up a point that can be embellished or a word that's used that may not be easy to understand, and I don't mean a vocabulary word, I mean particularly a clinical word, some aspect of the call lends itself to more information, more commentary, which I can't do at the time because I want to stay focused on what the person is bringing to the call, I set it aside. And Andrew and I pick several calls for each Look Back Friday, and I attempt to talk about them. So I will get to that. I remember a study, and there were some books written on this, very popular books, talking about nonverbal communications. What does it mean when somebody crosses their arms a certain way, or puts their hands in their pocket, or leans back? There is some truth to that. There are signs if someone is perhaps lying. They're called microexpressions. Or a certain subtle nervousness, shifting of the eyes. Yeah, okay, and certainly that is studied a lot at certain law enforcement levels or government levels. I've been to workshops on this stuff. I remember when I was writing my dissertation, I was considering doing a study on this. And as I read the research, what the research said was this: far more information is conveyed by words than nonverbal. Furthermore, you can get yourself in trouble by misinterpreting the nonverbal rather than listening to what the person is saying. I was in a class. I minored in counseling. I majored in clinical, minored in counseling. One of our classes was called Gestalt Therapy. This was therapy, I think it's Fritz Perls was the guy that founded Gestalt. Don't want to get into all the details of Gestalt because, for one reason, it's boring for you, and the other reason is I don't remember. That was decades ago. At one point in the class, the prof said, we digest information like we chew food. Yeah, I know, I was paying tuition for this. If you take huge bites of food and swallow most of it whole, you're not a very critical thinker. You just take in information and you don't assess it. You don't weigh it. On the other hand, if you take a bite of something and you chew it and chew it and chew it far beyond what you need to chew it, well, that indicates that maybe you overanalyze. You overthink. And there were a lot of people in the room nodding. Oh, I like the parallels. Yeah, I like this. I raised my hand. I said, have there been any studies on this supposed connection? Research? The prof said, Ray, I noticed that you're leaning back against the wall. Yeah, this was a Gestalt class. We didn't have desks. Come on, we're too cool for desks. In Gestalt therapy, you sit around with your backs against the wall. You're leaning back against the wall. And I wanted to say, yeah, I am, because I'm more comfortable this way. But I didn't. I said, oh. And he said, are you kind of telling me you're not real confident in your question? So I moved closer to the wall, stuck my backside against the wall, so I was sitting up very straight. I said, is there any research on this, sir? He said, your legs are crossed. Your legs are crossed, I noticed, in a position where, you sit what they used to call Indian style. Can you say that now? Can you have to say a Native American style? On the floor. He said, your legs are crossed. Is that confusion about this question? So I uncrossed my legs, put them straight out. I was nervous about putting them straight out because I didn't know what that would mean either. And I didn't want to tuck them underneath me because I didn't know what that would mean either. So I kind of uncrossed them. I said, "Any research on this?" No, I think I asked it like gently the third time. I was thinking, there wasn't anything I'm doing. My hair was parted a certain way. I don't think I had a twitch in my eye. There wasn't anything on my body that he could interpret. And I don't know if I ever got an answer to my question. I think I gave up. And I think he ducked the question. But there is something similar with parents and kids. It is not unusual for children to roll their eyes at their parents. When their parent says something the kid doesn't approve of or thinks is ridiculous, or so last week, Mom. It is definitely a communication. There's no question that's a communication. That's not something that is hard to interpret. That one essentially says, in so many words, you're ridiculous. That's what it says. It's disrespect. If you don't think it is, try that nonverbal on people in your life. Choose three. Your boss, maybe your pastor, your best friend. So whenever they say something you don't agree with, you don't like, roll your eyes. Just roll your eyes. See at the end of a month when you ask them, you still like me? See if they say, yes, I like you more than ever, because so many times in the last month you have given me nonverbal signals of your disdain. And I find that very refreshing. I find that transparent. I find that part of our open relationship. There are no masks in our interaction. I am clear what you think of me, even if you don't say a word. Yeah, see if they say that. Or see if that friendship or that connection starts to fray. Yeah, that's a nonverbal, all right. And most people know what it means. My advice to parents, when your kids roll their eyes, it's silent disrespect. It's a back look. It's not a back talk. It's a back look. Do something about it. It's disdainful. It's, you're useless. Whatever. How dumb. It really does. Oh, Dr. Ray, come on, you're overinterpreting it. No, I'm not. Do it to somebody else. See how they react to it. It's just kind of a whatever. Now, there is kind of a teasing rolling of the eyes. You know, if I tell a dad joke and one of my kids just rolls their eyes. Okay, that's okay. They're demeaning my dad joke. They're not demeaning me, but if I say something that is of substance or guidance or a rule or a condition or a consequence and I get the rolling of the eyes, that's back look. So, two conclusions. One, a lot of verbal body language is hard to interpret. Better to listen to what the person says. The other conclusion, some body language is pretty easy to interpret, and rolling of the eyes is one of the most easy to interpret. Whatever it happens to mean, it's negative in most cases. It can be teasing, it can be fun-loving, it can be, oh boy, here we go. But the context makes it pretty clear whether it was just a benign show of, oh geez, Dad, another dumb joke, or, Dad, you're ridiculous. All right, when we come back, we're going to be jumping on these calls. This is Dr. Ray.
Looking for a trusted contractor for your exterior home improvements? Call locally owned Mighty Dog Roofing today for a quote on roofing, gutters, siding, or windows. Mighty Dog Roofing uses premium products including Owens Corning shingles and James Hardy fiber cement siding, and they offer one of the best warranties in the industry through their OC Platinum Preferred status. Visit MightyDogRoofing.com today or call 833-MIGHTY-4. That's 833-MIGHTY-4.
Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
Encounter Ministries presents their first transformation night of the season, featuring Neil Lozano on Friday, September 5th at St. Patrick's in Brighton. Join us for this powerful talk, Deliverance in the Power of the Gospel, followed by an optional time of prayer ministry. This free event will also be live-streamed. Praise and worship begins at 6:30 p.m. Visit EncounterCatholic.com to learn more.
Underwritten in part by the following nonprofit.
Are you paying high prices with a traditional health insurance company that pays for things that violate your conscience? There's an alternative available. Solidarity HealthShare is a community of faithful individuals and families that never share into immoral medical services, all while saving you money with prices starting as low as $85 per month for singles and $512 for families. Never fund another abortion with your healthcare dollars. Call 844-313-4999 to learn more.
Thank you so very much for joining me here on this Look Back Friday. Dr. Ray Guarendi, Monday through Friday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. The doctor is in. All right, let's see what we got here. I'm looking at the clock. I'm looking at the timing here. That's a long one. Let's go to Anne, whose dad was healed through prayer. She wants to talk a little bit about what Nicholas said regarding prayer. In Ann's case, this was a pretty potent result, that's easy for me to say, of prayer.
Hi, I used to be a nurse when I was not disabled and, retired. But there were studies done about people in cardiology where they had prayer groups praying for certain people, and the patients didn't know it, and there were unexplained recoveries and things gone much better than ever anticipated. Well, anyway, I was, in my later years, I was taking care of both parents. My mom had dementia from a mini stroke, but she was still mobile. And my dad, he had pressure on his brain from a mini stroke again. He had asthma and diabetes and things like that. And he just could not be managed anymore at home because he was just out driving and, he totaled his car. He didn't get hurt, but, it could have been worse. But anyway, he was in a nursing home where they just kept an eye on him because he would always try to escape. He thought he was living in the wartime, and he wanted to get on a train to go to Austria. And he was just, back in his younger years. But anyway, he was in a wheelchair. He was incontinent, meaning he couldn't control his bladder anymore. And he was very confused and difficult. And, he didn't really hit anybody, but he was very verbally abusive. And one day I took Mom in there, and I had a prayer card from St. Philomena. It's Philomena. And I became acquainted with her. We used to camp in Franklinville, New York, and there was a church to Philomena, and I never heard of her. So I read all about her, and she does all kinds of amazing things. So anyway, long story short, we took a prayer card, and we put it on Dad's knee, and Mom and I just did a simple Our Father, Hail Mary, and Glory Be, and asked for the intercession of St. Philomena to help my dad. Do you know the next day he was out of the wheelchair, he was walking, he was continent, and he had a clear head, and he became a total opposite of what his personality had been. And he ended up in another nursing home because he still needed more care than I was able to provide, and he was able to cooperate with. But I used to go every day and take him out for driving for lunch, and he just didn't want to be there every day, and, I just couldn't manage him anymore. But anyway, he was just totally different. He had a priest come from St. Michael's to talk to him, and Dad told him his whole life story about his mom was an alcoholic. He was in an orphanage because she couldn't manage all these kids, and he had so much anger issues. And so he talked to this priest for 2 hours and did confession, and he just got everything out of his system. All the anger went away, and he became, reestablished with the church, and he came back to the sacraments, and he died a very peaceful death 2 years later in his sleep, very peacefully. And it was a miracle that all this happened. I just wanted to give glory to God.
And let me ask some questions about this whole thing. When your dad was deteriorating physically and cognitively, was that over a period of years?
Yes.
So it wasn't something where he may have had a stroke or something that could resolve itself in a relatively short period of time. No, this was a classical dementia-related and physically related deterioration.
Yes, over 10, 15 years.
And then, when you prayed to St. Philomena, you put the prayer card. Not only the next day. Now, how long had it been since he'd been out of that wheelchair?
I don't know, several years.
He got up and walked.
Yep.
Now, one of the miracles to that, this as a nurse, I don't doubt that he had absolutely no muscular strength left in his legs.
No, he was just skin and bones.
So he got up and walked. It wasn't a stumble. It wasn't a grab onto this to keep myself up. He walked.
Yeah, he walked to fully ambulatory.
That's crazy.
Yep.
And, okay, his head cleared. The signs of the dementia, the signs of living in the past, the signs of starting to not recognize people, that left.
It left.
And, okay, for people of religion, the more potent miracle was that he turned toward his faith, which probably he was an angry man prior to that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's got to be people thinking, why did God do that for her dad, not mine, or not my spouse?
You're right.
You got any answer for that?
I don't, because we have a family full of all kinds of problems, and we keep praying, and God can do things in a minute or an instant, and he, sometimes it's God's will. And when my dad was very young in Europe, and he prayed, he was very devoted to Our Lady and our Lord. He didn't always go to church, but he would say a prayer here and there in his good years. And he just trusted, and maybe that connection.
And that's a pretty moving story there,
Yep.
God bless you for that. Jeez. I'm aware of those studies that say this group of people will pray for these folks going into, for example, heart surgery, and this group of people will not pray for them. Which raises the question, can you assign people to prayer groups? Meaning, for study, many people are part of prayer groups because they choose to. So I guess the question becomes, if these surveys, and I'm not familiar with all the details in them, if these surveys said, here are people who need prayers, would you pray for these people? But they didn't tell the people praying that there are other people that were as controlled, in other words, as much alike as the people being prayed for in all kinds of dimensions, all kinds of variables. They just simply didn't tell them about them. And then they measured what kind of outcomes the prayed for people had compared to those who didn't have this group of people praying for them. And I've seen those results, and yes, there definitely is differences in some studies. I think the thing here is the timing. I'm reminded of a wonderful, wonderful book by Father Robert Spitzer. I just highly oh, come on, Ray, you're supposed to be an articulate professional. Recommend it for those of you especially who have sons in particular who have decided that science has replaced God and that there really is no evidence to point to God. I call it, I think the book is called Christ, Reason, and Miracles. I think that's right. Fascinating. And in it he talks about one of the highly attested miracles, because it had so many witnesses. Fatima. The miracle of the sun, the dancing of the sun, the drying of clothes after an incredibly wet day. The people who came to witness this supposed miracle who were atheists or hard-hearted scientists in their mind, and they were going to come to see these foolish people be duped by this girl, following this girl, and they became Christian. And one of the things that they pointed out was the timing. Lucia had said, this is going to happen on October 13th. The lady said there will be a miracle. She didn't say the miracle of the sun, by the way. She said there will be a miracle, October 13th. And she said this a couple of times throughout the summer. A priest, Stanley Jackie, gave a possible explanation for a natural phenomenon, accounting for these. Oh, I'm getting cut off. I'll stick with me. I'll explain a little bit right after the break. My timing was terrible and was a former nurse. Her dad had been going downhill with dementia for about 10 years, wheelchair bound for years of that. She just happened to be at a shrine, I believe, for Philomena, if I got my details correct. She prayed to St. Philomena and also had a prayer card that she had placed near her dad. And the very next day, he was out of the wheelchair, far less confused, and a difference in his personality. Now one might say, oh, okay, stuff happens, it kind of happens, that can happen. The problem is getting out of the wheelchair after being in it for years. You got nothing left in your legs. There's no way that you can walk. You can't. You'll collapse if he was completely wheelchair bound. Now, if he would get out periodically and walk through physical therapy, you might say, okay. But here's the point I wanted to make. At Fatima, Lucia said that the lady that she saw in Cova d'Aria said to her there'll be a miracle on October 13th to confirm my appearance. Didn't say what the miracle would be. So at that time there was estimates of 50 to 70,000 people there. Many non-believers. As a matter of fact, it was reported in the local newspaper. The journalist said, this is what I saw. Okay, so it's just thousands and thousands of witnesses, all saying the same thing about the sun, what it did, how it danced, how it threw off colors, how the ground was dried, it descended upon the earth and scared people to death because they thought the world was ending. Interestingly enough, there was no reports of any kind of nearby installations saying, no, we had a record of the sun going crazy. No, it didn't. That was just an appearance for that area. Father Stanley Jackie, who also happens to be a scientist, gave an explanation as how possibly a comet could have caused this. But his point was, even if so, God uses natural things. But here's the point that Father Spitzer made, which is the odds of that occurring exactly when Lucia said it would. Now, this little girl here are minuscule. Minuscule. A miracle is going to happen on October 13th, here, in the Cova d'Aria. And it did. Now, if you say, well, yeah, but there's a plausible scientific explanation. I read a summary of Father Jackie's explanation, and yeah, okay, I'm not an astronomer, although I did have a course in college. It's one of my electives is astronomy. Of course, back when I took it, back when I was in college, the Earth was still cooling, and I think the Big Bang had happened maybe an hour earlier. I don't know. But anyway, given that, the timing of all this, even if God used a comet to create all of this, first of all, how do you explain the drying up of all their clothes and the ground? Because the ground was saturated, it was soaked, it was muddy. They had been standing in the rain for a long time. They were totally wet. Everything dried up. They've got so many witnesses of this. They've got high-level people, journalists, doctors, lawyers, oftentimes agnostics or atheists there, more or less looking at, okay, let's see all these gullible peasants get drug along by a 11, 12-year-old girl. And they were shocked, absolutely shocked. And they recalled it. They wrote about it on October 13th, 1917. So the timing of a miracle, I think that's the point I want to make here with Anne's story about her father having this dramatic improvement in his condition the very day that she made this prayer to St. Philomena and the very day she had the Holy Card. The timing of miracles oftentimes bespeaks that God has chosen to intervene and either use natural physical phenomena to bring about something. I mean, I could easily see where God could have altered the neurological structure of Ann's dad's brain. If we would have done some kind of CAT scan or something, PET scan, anything to assess his brain and compare it to his brain the day before, they might have said, whoa, well, there's nowhere near as much shrinkage. Oh my, there's more activity in this part of the brain. Now, one would say, well, see, natural explanation. Well, I don't have any doubt that God could do that. He uses natural processes. He built them. He designed them. Why wouldn't he use them? The woman who was besieged by a relentless flow of blood for years, who touched Jesus' cloak, and the blood stopped. Well, I could easily, for me, the explanation is God did it through natural processes. And if modern science could have assessed the before and after of this woman, they would have said, yeah, well, here's what happened in your body. Of course. The question is the timing. It happened immediately when she touched Jesus' cloak. So one could say, yeah, but, sometimes the body just cures itself. It does. A lot of stuff happens like that we can't explain. That's true. That is true. Sometimes illnesses go away that should never have gone away. Sometimes cancer is cured inexplicably in people. Question is the timing. It was when she touched Jesus. It was when the sun did what it did on the exact day and time that Lucia reported that the beautiful lady told her there would be a miracle. When we come back, let's see what we're going to go to here. I got an interesting call. A very dear friend of the program, of me, Father Deacon Lawrence from Michigan. That particular day, I think I did a monologue on certain types of fears that can beleaguer people. And I talked about a woman, I think I did, if I recall correctly, who had a fear of escalators. And we couldn't get to the bottom of her fear, but she was just terrified of getting on these things. And it just so happened that Father Deacon Lawrence shared his fear of escalators. And I thought, Father Deacon, we're going to make that a look-back call because there's a lot to be said about something like that. So, when we come back, fear of escalators. Fear of elevators are much more common, by the way. Much, much more common. Escalators, nowhere near as much. So, it kind of shows you that irrational fears can be attached to just about anything. Dr. Ray Guarendi, a pro athlete trapped in an aging psychologist's body. Good to have you with me. This Look Back Friday. Father Deacon Lawrence, I was talking in my opening monologue some time back about fears and fears of elevators. And he shared that he had, and I don't recall the details, if he still had a fear of escalators.
I think I was less than 3 years old. I'm the youngest of four, and it's on an escalator at a JL Hudson's in Detroit. And I think I fell trying to get on going down. And so I'm always, since then, have been afraid of stepping onto an elevator or an escalator when it's going down.
Yeah, you can't time it, huh?
It's fine.
Can't time it.
I can't time it, right. And so it's weird, but you're talking about while I was waiting, I mean, having fear of different things. I know I used to be paranoid around dogs. I got bit 3 times by 3 different dogs by the time I was like 12 years old. And the first one I was playing with, we were visiting where my mother grew up in Pennsylvania, and I was playing with a collie's puppies, and Lassie came out of nowhere and bit me, and I remember my sister saying a while ago that she thinks that the dog bit me 2 or 3 times. And then so after that I was just paranoid.
Well, both of those things, Father Deacon, I talked about the fear of escalators in the first half of the show, that we might not have heard it. And both of those things were traumatic experiences. Yeah. That was attached to the fear. Now, the question is, how do you get over the traumatic memory, right?
Right.
The dogs might be tougher because there is some risk in an unknown canine. That's true. The escalator is not. The escalator is, with a little practice, you step on the first step, put your hand on the rail, and go down. Okay, you can do that. Spit out your gum. If you're worried about tripping, don't try to walk and chew gum. Just spit out your gum right there at the top. They get a little spittoon where you can spit your gum out, and you're fine. But I would imagine, though, that memory from age 4, which for you is what, 30 years ago? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like me. So you tapped into probably the main element in phobias, which is some kind of traumatic memory or experience that you have to rewire your brain. Maybe you start out with chihuahuas or something. Of course, those little dogs are just as mean, you know. It's the big ones that don't have anything to prove. These little yappers, they'll go after your leg.
The second one I got bit by was a mean yapper, just a little one. The third one was a friend was going to help me get over my fear of dogs, and it was a German Shepherd. It was a great dog, but I was scared. I was so scared that it ended up biting me, and I felt so bad. Even to this day, it's like the family got rid of the dog, and it's like, oh, geez.
Father Deacon, so glad that you call any time. They're going to cut us off here in 20 seconds, but you call any time because we can talk more about this, because you will be a future look-back call, because this is such a common thing among so many folks. I had a friend years ago who told me that when she went through airports, she had to look for alternative movements to a higher level. Now, fortunately, most airports only have 1, 2, or 3 levels. They don't have 9, 10. Not like cruise ships. I had a friend who was afraid of elevators, and that gave him serious problems on a cruise ship. Because, hey, the best buffet was on the 15th level. And you don't want to miss that buffet. So, escalator for her, and I talked to her about this, and how did it happen? And she didn't have a traumatic event like Father Deacon Lawrence did. He's a little kid. He fell, tripped. And by the way, I have fallen, tripped on escalators, too. I was coming up Cleveland Hopkins, and I had this big, heavy suitcase, and somehow its legs caught right when we were supposed to get off, and it tipped the suitcase over, and I went with it. And I hit my knee. You know how they have those teeth edges to those stairs? Well, yeah, I gashed it pretty good. So I could have gotten afraid of those things, but what happened, I just became more cautious. When I have a big suitcase, I lift the front wheels of the suitcase like you're supposed to do anyway. Escalators, for this woman, she couldn't give a reason. She just said, I don't know. They just distress me. I avoid them. I said, what do you think will happen? It's not like an elevator. You could be caught between floors. That's rare, but it could happen. An escalator, if it stops and you're on it, well, it just becomes the stairs. Escalators really can't break down. They just transform into stairs. I mean, I was trapped on an escalator once for 3 hours. Yeah, I was headed on up. It was probably a long escalator. One of these big long ones at the airports, 50 steps. Along about step 20 or 25, it just shuddered to a stop. I thought, oh no, I'm trapped. on this escalator. I sure hope someone comes to get me. Yeah, 3 hours. 3 hours I was there on the escalator. I know what you're thinking. Come on. So, Father Deacon's story illustrates a point. If there is some kind of scary, even using the word traumatic incident in some circumstance, some place, it can become attached to anxiety. And even though his falling down at age 3 on an escalator has probably never, ever happened since, much more coordinated as he's gotten older, that reverberating memory tricks his body into reacting as though there's danger there. It's fear. So what did he do? Well, he called it paranoid. What he I think was referring to as he was very suspicious, uncertain of getting on an escalator. But I should have asked him, and I didn't. Do you get on them? My friend, she doesn't. She looks for elevators or she looks for stairs, and stairs are tough if you're carrying luggage. And by the way, I should have asked her, only down or only up? Most people it's down, by the way. There's something about looking down like that creates this sense of vertigo. It's like, oh. Okay. Now, he had this long ago memory, and it shows you how potent that memory can be. He could rewire it, but my question is, how many times has he been through an airport and actually attempted to rewire it? You know, maybe if it's 5 times, he's not a frequent flyer, it's 5 times in an airport, he can easily avoid an escalator. It doesn't create that much inconvenience. For my friend who is through airports all the time, it created major inconvenience. She chose the inconvenience over the feeling of anxiety if she got on an escalator. Father Deacon, he could have gotten on it and not liked it and felt a little discomfort, but he still did it. So he would be rewiring it. Elevators are far more common places. They are possibly packed with people, and a lot of folks do not like the closeness of other people. That really bothers them. The fear of something going wrong, you think about it. I mean, you get on an elevator and you go up 13 floors thinking to yourself, well, you know, what happens if this thing breaks? I mean, we fall down. Am I going to jump up right before we hit to counter it? I used to think that. I used to think, just jump up. Yeah, well, you can't jump up at 100 miles an hour. It's the momentum that elevator would get by the time it hits the ground. So elevators are much, much more common. Escalators illustrate that anything can be attached to anxiety. Anything. And the only way past it is to rewire the body. Because the mind tells the body this is a dangerous thing, and the body reacts with anxiety, which is a normal fear response. Fight it or flight it. Most people flight it. And all that does is keep the anxiety in place. My friend who never used escalators never really got past her fear of escalators because she just didn't want to. She wasn't going to do it. Before I go, one quick personal story. Some years ago. Narrow flight of stairs. Looked like about 20 flight. And it was very, very narrow. Very narrow. It couldn't have been more than 3 feet wide. I thought, okay, well, I'll just take the stairs. About the second step, I had dress shoes on, slick soles. I slipped. I just flat out slipped. And I didn't fall back. I fell forward. In falling forward, I rolled. And I gained momentum all the way down. And I was holding a briefcase. I didn't want to let go of the briefcase. Who knows where it was going to go? So I held it. And I must have turned maybe 3-4 times. When I got to the ground, I stopped, of course. I hit hard. And there were people down there at the bottom because they saw me coming down these steps. How shall we say, in an atypical way. Well, I had to save some self-image, so I jumped up like I had just dismounted from the uneven parallel bars. I put my hands up in the air, waiting for an 8.5. All I got instead was, "Are you okay? Are you all right? You sure you're okay?" Now, conceivably, that flight could have made me very, very, very nervous in the future looking down at stairs like that. It didn't. Fortunately, it did not. But I got to admit, I sometimes went a little more slowly shortly thereafter, and if there was a handrail, I kind of used it. I didn't just jaunt down the steps. Learned a little lesson. This is Dr. A.
If you've noticed improved sound from 990 AM, you'd not only be correct, but you have yourselves to thank. Donors like you to our Strong Towers Foundation is allowing us to make some improvements. Ave Maria Radio has a lot to go, but we wanted to thank you and share the small victories so that we can continue to transform lives while offering hope, guidance, and truth to all those that are searching.
I don't think we've replaced our siding since we moved in 20 years ago. But I'm sure it's still fine, right?
We better call Mighty Dog Roofing of Ann Arbor.
Damaged siding can cause mold buildup and weaken your home structure. Protect your family by calling local Catholics Dan and Mary Flanagan at Mighty Dog Roofing for a free inspection of your siding, roof, or windows. Mighty Dog Roofing, 734-224-4916. That's 734-224-4916. Do you own popular index mutual funds or ETFs? If so, you're automatically own shares of companies that conflict with your moral beliefs. Ave Maria mutual funds are managed to conform to pro-life and pro-family values. Long-term investors can invest in the no-load Ave Maria mutual funds. The experienced professional portfolio managers make decisions based on investment fundamentals and pro-life values. You can learn more about Ave Maria mutual funds today at 866-AVE-MARIA or visit AveMariaFunds.com.
This program brought to you in part by Ave Maria, Florida, a big kind of small town where golf carts take you everywhere and there's always something fun around the corner. Discover championship golf, resort-style amenities, and a town center full of shopping and dining. With Ave Maria University and Ave Maria Catholic Church at its heart, it's a community full of connection and charm. More than 25 model homes are available for viewing. More information can be found at AveMaria.com. That's AveMaria.com.
Well, fear of escalators is approximately 135 years old because the first escalator, Andrew, I looked it up, I found it, 1891. So prior to that, there was no... Oh, you got 1892? Okay, novelty ride at Coney Island, 1896. Inclined elevator, huh? So prior to that, there was no anxiety about escalators. They weren't invented yet. Interesting. I love C.S. Lewis, love his insights into life, and when I run out of time, I can't get another look-back call in, I read something from one of his quotes. I've been searching hard. I asked Andrew to find a quote from C.S. Lewis on escalators, but I haven't found one yet. Andrew, see if you can find one, Lewis, talking about escalators. Instead, I'll give this one. A silly idea is that good people do not know what temptation means. Yeah, they're good, so they don't get tempted, right? He says, this is an obvious lie. Only those who try to resist temptation know how strong it is. Good point. A man who gives in to temptation after 5 minutes simply does not know what it would have been like an hour later. This is why bad people, in one sense, know very little about badness. They've lived a sheltered life by always giving in. It's like an army. You don't realize the full strength of an army until you resist it all the way. If you surrender at any point, you don't get a sense of how strong that army was. That's what temptation does. If you resist temptation, say you've been into pornography and that computer is there and you know the password and it's tugging at you, pulling at you, tugging at you, and you resist it. And you resist it and resist it and resist it until your wife gets home. And you resisted it for an hour and a half. You have a pretty good idea of how strong that temptation can get. If you would have given in at the 12-minute mark, you wouldn't have felt the full force of that temptation. That's the point Lewis is emphasizing here, which is good people get tempted a lot, and they fight the temptation, they resist the temptation, they ignore the temptation, all the way until it simply tapers to nothing, if it does ever get there. Thank you for joining me here on The Doctor Is In on this Variant Look Back Friday. Andrew Kruchek, for all you do at that end. I couldn't do the show without you, so I appreciate it so very much. Good Lord permitting, you have a great weekend. See you Monday, and walk with God. Shouldn't be anxious about that.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.